Shalom WJC family. This week the portions for Shabbat are Acharei, Mot, and Kedoshim. And the centerpiece of these parshiot are the Holiness Code, this advice that God gives us, or this demand that God gives us. Kedoshim tiyu ki kadosh ani Adonai Elohechem. You shall be holy, for I, the Lord your God, am holy. Leviticus chapter 19, verse 2. There are tons of commentaries and amazing amounts of wisdom about these verses and what it means to be holy. Every great commentator and rabbi, the Talmud, they all comment on this. Today I want to think of it a little bit differently from some of those classical commentaries, because I think there's a way to read it that is particularly important for this moment. And this moment being April 30th, when I'm recording this, 2020, in a time of pandemic, in a time when people are in their houses, and families, couples, friendships, employer-employee relationships, every relationship, the justice system are all under extreme pressure, extreme stress, and extreme strain. So what does it mean, you shall be holy, for I, the Lord your God, am holy? The laws in the Holiness Code all seem to, almost all, we could make the argument that they account for the relationships between people, how we treat people. Many of them are involved with the arayot, with the boundaries around sexual behavior. There's also how we treat our neighbors, how we sit in judgment, and so on and so forth. And the kernel, the heart of all of those rules around relationships are the rule of the most basic relationship for Israel, for Jewish people to have with God, which is Kedoshim tiyu ki kadosh ani Adonai Elohechem. You shall be holy, for I, the Lord your God, am holy. And the way I want to read that is the way we might read Acharei at mekudeshet li. Right? So God is saying to the Jewish people, you will be holy because you are connected to me and I am holy. In the same way that at a wedding ceremony, we say, behold, you are sanctified to me. You are holy to me. According to the laws of Moses in Israel, this is the sentence that creates marriage, which we call Kedushin in Hebrew. So what's going on here? God is saying we are going to have a special relationship, a Kodesh relationship. And what does that mean? It means it's going to be structured. It means it's going to have rules and boundaries. All the different commentaries who talk about what Kedoshim tiyu means in one way or another, again, I shouldn't use blanket statements, most of the different commentaries talk about Kodesh being connected to separation or boundedness, of knowing where lines are and being able to stay, willing and able to stay on the right side of those lines. And God is saying we are going to have a relationship, and that relationship is going to have boundaries. Right? We are going to have to stay within the lines with one another. And by the way, when you understand how to do that with me, with God, you'll understand how to run a whole society where holiness is evident, because of the way you treat each other, because the way you treat the basic sexual relationships between partners, spouses, because of the way you treat your neighbors in a way that elevates the relationship rather than takes advantage of it, because of the way we run our court systems, our legal systems, and on and on. We are told we can have this sense of holiness from the relationship that we have with God in the rest of our lives, and create a world that is governed in this relationship of Kedoshim. It's a beautiful idea that this is the marriage proposal of God to the Jewish people. Kedoshim tiyu, you will be holy, ki kadosh ani Adonai Elohechem, because I am holy. Together we are going to form a bond of holiness, just as spouses do. And it's a beautiful, beautiful idea. But I wanted to bring it up today and in this moment is because in order for those relationships to stay Kodesh, right? Kodesh isn't a thing that happens and now you're holy and that's it. right? Your husband and wife, you stood under the chuppah together, you have a holy relationship. You have a friend, and you've learned together, and you've grown together, and you've supported each other through difficult times. Now your relationship is Kodesh, and that's it. It stays that way. Even our relationship with God, right? God says, you shall be holy. It's an ongoing process. It's not like, okay, you've got the Torah, we had Sinai, and now you're holy. Holiness requires work. It requires keeping up those boundaries. It requires continued attention to the details of the rights, responsibilities, and obligations that we have to each other. It's true of our relationships with our spouses. It's true of our relationships with our children, with our fellow employees, with our neighbors, just as it's true of our relationship with God. One of the great dangers of this moment when we are stuck in our houses and we can't go out and take our usual routines, our usual time from one another, our particularly pointed time with one another, all those relationships, all those boundaries are under tremendous strain. I fear that many of them are evaporating. And that is so dangerous. It's dangerous to the relationship between spouses who've never spent 24 hours in the same house together, who've never been 24 hours a day parenting their kids together, losing their patience with each other, losing their patience with their children, losing their patience with the world and the state that it's in. Friendships. The person I used to have lunch with every week, now I can't see. The study partner I used to sit down and learn with, now we can only do through a screen. These are new experiences for relationship. This is not how the rules of our relationships, our Kodesh relationships, our most special relationships are supposed to work. Even the relationship between parent and children are upside down. Right? Children are worrying about their parents in ways that they haven't had to before. Because the older you are, the more vulnerable you are. So even adult children are finding much earlier than we ever thought we would have to be worried about our parents. That is not how the relationship is supposed to work. It is up to us to put the strictures, the structures back around those relationships so that they can continue to be Kodesh. And where they can't, where those structures just can't be, to accept and recognize that that is what is happening. And that we will come through this and we'll have the opportunity to rebuild those structures. But in the meantime, to set aside sacred time for each other. By the way, just like God sets aside sacred time for us, right, on Shabbat. And we set aside sacred time for God on Shabbat. And we call Shabbat Kodesh. We need to set aside sacred time for each other. Just like we welcome the Shabbat Kala every week to celebrate that beautiful relationship, we need to set aside time to celebrate each other, our spouses, our friends, our families, even if that means, just having a time to meet up and catch up, and to learn something together, to see a movie and talk about it, whatever it is we would be doing. Obviously, it's not the same, but we can work towards at least building temporary structures to carry us through sacred times, sacred moments, and recognizing that though these structures are under strain, they do not have to break. My friends, I am here for you. Your clergy is here for you. Rabbi Siegelman, Cantor Ethan, if you need to talk, and some of your relationships are under particular strain, even if under strain, even with your relationship with yourself, and certainly your relationship with God, all of those are understandable right now. We're here to talk. We're here to help. Couples, individuals, you're not alone. And even if you don't want to come in and talk, it's okay. I hope recognizing that so many of our relationships, all of our relationships, are under these same kind of strains and stresses, and that we will find our way through. Relationships have been under this kind of strain before, and people have found their way. Will things be different? Probably. They may even be better. Sometimes it's coming through the gauntlet together that creates the holiness. We had to be slaves in Egypt before we could stand with God in holiness at Sinai. We'll go through our own strains, we'll go through our own gauntlet, but remember, you are not alone. We are here for you. God is here for you. And we have the opportunity to model that relationship by setting aside sacred time with those we love, by making sure we still respect the rules of our relationship, which means sometimes we need space and sometimes we need to get to be together, that always we have to have opportunities to do for the people we love, and yes, to give them the opportunity to do for us. It means we have to allow ourselves to be vulnerable and open ourselves up, both to criticism and support. That's Kodesh. That's our relationship with God. And now it is as important as ever that we make sure that is our relationship with each other, starting with our partners, our spouses, our children, that family, and on out into the neighborhood and our workplaces that are under such stress. Kedoshim Tihiyu, let us all be. Let us all take this opportunity to recognize the holiness around it and to be cognizant and deliberate in making more holiness, which the world needs now as much as ever. Wish you a Shabbat Shalom.